It's coming. Okay, now maximize. We are done. Okay.
We are done. Ready? So, many of you may have identified that the music we chose is a version of a Beethoven symphony that is used as the anthem of the European Union. And this was in purpose. This was because in the Central Ionian Sea, we have been exploring the earliest Europeans. What are thought as the earliest Europeans, and these are the Homo neanderthalensis, and we are exploring the archaeology of the Neanderthals. Give me a second to get rid of this band so that I can see. So we are moving here to the Ionian Sea, and our work since 2010 has been investigating, has been investigating the small islets and islands of the central part of the Ionian Sea. And this is a view of the Inner Ionian Archipelago taken from Mount Scaros on Lefkas, on East Lefkas. What I would like to do to share with you tonight is to present the research design that informs a series of surveys and excavations in the Ionian Sea to explore the archaeology of the Middle Paleolithic or the archaeology of the Neanderthal people, trying to develop methodological approaches to address something that I like to call as hybrid island archaeology, because the island archaeology of the Paleolithic period is not like the island archaeology of any other later period. And I will briefly, shortly explain why. So the Inner Ionian Archipelago began in 2010 and has had a strong regional focus. It aims to build a reliable Paleolithic record to connect open-air and stratified cave sites to address three major issues. The first is the prehistoric settlement of the islands and the coast of West Greece right across these islands. The second issue is the early sea crossings by Middle Paleolithic tool-using groups. We like to be careful when we address them. We prefer to address them as Middle Paleolithic tool-using groups in a closed and protected sea where the next island is visible and indeed inviting to explore. The third issue is the Middle Paleolithic settlement, and more importantly, the adaptations through time in what was a dynamic and changing environment where sea level fluctuations played a very, very important role. To this end, our work has employed intensive surface survey, marine geophysical research to map the seabed and reconstruct the coastline history and the paleogeography of the region, excavation of the Panthera Cave initiated in 2016. This is a collapsed cave site yielding solely Middle Paleolithic material, and it is situated on the rocky shore of Kythros islet. And last but not least, study the excavation material, the very important excavated assemblages of Choirotrypa Cave, a major cave site on the nearby Lefkas island. And let us begin with the intensive surface survey. This lasted for 3 seasons, 2010, 11, and 12, and it was coupled with small-scale excavation and geological survey. The coverage included all the islands of the archipelago, with the exception of Kythros and what is the other? Kythros and one more big mountainous island whose name now escapes me. We divided the surface in smaller units, and we feed walked. Here you can see the southern part, the narrow southern part of Meganisi Sea, which is the major island of the Inner Ionian Sea of the northern part, the Levallois Sea of the Inner Ionian Sea, and see different colors indicate different densities of find. We walked in wide landscapes. In order to get there, we crossed untouched seascapes protected in their majority by Natura 2000. We walked with our students in deserted islands inhabited by a few goats or seagulls that were sometimes annoyed by our presence. We explored the red beds and the rocky patches of land and soil wherever this was available and this was retained, and we came up with various finds. We also explored the taluses, and we mapped the caves and rock shelters of these islands back in the local high school, where we had settled our laboratory. We worked on the cartography of the area and the geology of the area. We cleaned, recorded, sorted, and taught, because first and foremost, this project is the University of Crete training project for its undergraduate and graduate students. It's part of the curriculum and it's mandatory for our students. The yield of this 3-year survey work was interesting, and because we are in a flint country in the Ionian Sea islands, lithic artifacts by far outnumbered sherds. We recorded and we discovered artifacts, structures, settlements that the remains of a Mediterranean rural landscape. We explored the local history from Paleolithic times to the 19th century. We had a distinctive component of geological research that mapped and recorded the caves and rock shelters, and also investigated the geological history in what is a tectonically active landscape. According to our results, human occupation, human presence on the islands span from the Middle Paleolithic, where we have napstone industries, which were the topic of Christina Papoulia's PhD thesis, some Mesolithic, some Neolithic, Bronze Age, early and very late to the transition to the early Iron Age, finds and very exciting burial monuments, Roman and late antiquity pottery, and 18th and 19th century pottery. This is a typical karstic basin. I'm taking you now to the Middle Paleolithic finds and to the Middle Paleolithic archaeological settings. And this is a typical karstic basin associated with Middle Paleolithic finds and identified in the landscape by its very, by this terra rossa, the red soils on the surface, out of which Middle Paleolithic remains erode. Beyond the archaeological sites, since the audience is much wider than the narrow Paleolithic gang, we also came across and recorded monuments of rural life that remain intact and witness sustainable use of natural resources. We recorded water tanks and wells, threshing areas, wall separating properties, or more importantly, preventing soil erosion, windmills, goat pens, and charcoal burning areas. Beyond archaeology, interdisciplinary work was focused on the history of the natural and cultural history, the natural landscape and the anthropogenic landscape. So beyond the geological history that we saw above, we also worked with social anthropologists, with ethnoarchaeologists, and with biologists who worked and recorded and conducted her thesis on island ecology and biodiversity. Here is a slide on our interdisciplinary approach to geological history, to lithic raw material sourcing. We had an MA, two masters, one in the National and Capodistrian University of Athens in the geology department that addressed the flint sources of manganese, and one submitted to the biology department on the ecology of the islands, biology department, University of Patras. The survey team, and I'm closing the survey, consisted, I have to say that the survey, the first 3 years, was a collaboration between the University of Crete and the local effort of Etologarnania and Lefkas. Their respective efforts, Mrs. Maria Stavropoulou Gatsi and Olympia Vikatou from Etologarnania and Lefkas, and Dr. Antonis Vasilakis, who were the heads of the effort, of the two efforts, collaborated with us and resumed a large burden of the work and all the planning that we had to do. This work wouldn't have been possible without Vivian Staikou, the most enthusiastic and dedicated archaeologist of the effort of prehistoric and classical antiquities of Etologarnania and Lefkas, and the rest of my team. I'm moving quickly to the next slides. And I want to say that from almost every single surveying locale, the presence of the sea was breathtaking. The visibility of other islands was also excellent. This was not by chance. We were practically surveying only the highest points of the Pleistocene and early Holocene landscape, whereas the largest part of it, the terrestrial part, lies today beneath the sea. In the Pleistocene, the short distance between the islands that we were surveying and the neighboring Lefkas and the mainland coast, combined with the shallow waters, the shallow seabed in the area, meant that changes in the sea level during glacial and interglacial periods would have caused the islands to become alternately connected to and isolated from the larger land masses. That is why I mentioned and I spoke about a hybrid island archaeology, which does not end, the Paleolithic archaeology of the islands does not end in the terrestrial, does not begin in the coast, does not end in the coast of these islands. Thus, over time, new living conditions and environments were constantly being created for Neanderthals, which responded to this in their turn. The islands of the archipelago are today the highest tips of the original late, middle, and upper Pleistocene landscape, a large part of which now lies submerged beneath the sea. And the Inner Ionian survey posed a methodological challenge for the realization of a hybrid island archaeology, alternating as it was between mainland and islands, passing points and stopping places on a small and viable spatial scale. It was almost natural that the second component of our work would involve marine geophysical research to map the seabed and reconstruct the coastline history and the paleogeography of the region. Today, many cave floors are submerged below sea levels, and here comes the relevance of mapping the submerged prehistoric landscapes of the Ionian, combining land survey that our students and our team conducted, and archaeological, underwater, and oceanographic research. Have a look at this slide, which is one of my favorite slides, that visualizes the sea levels and the sea level change at different times. And see that for the largest part of the last 450,000 years, the sea level was like this. Only this part, these are the highest points, and here we are today. So our work, in this part of our work, we collaborated with our colleagues from the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, and especially our long-term collaborator, Dr. Dimitris Sakellariou. And here, can you see my cursor? Well, I can't hear you. You are not supposed to.
Yes, we can.
Hear, but if you can see, the purple lines are the lines, the purple and the red lines are the lines of coverage, because it was a sampling exercise. And as a result of that, the second pillar of our work was the offshore work, which used the high-resolution seismic sub-bottom profiling in the areas I showed you earlier. And in this way, we were able to define and map submerged low sea level paleo shorelines and prehistoric landscapes as brought about by sea level changes, by tectonic vertical movements, and both erosion and depositional processes. And here you can see a reconstructions of the parts that were terrestrial at various periods, of low sea level stands. You see the importance. These are three lakes in what was largely during the glacial periods of the Pleistocene, what was an extended terrestrial landscape that included Lefkas and the islands and islets of the Inner Ionian Archipelago. Of particular importance, thanks to the suggestion of a dear colleague from the University of Patras, who from the very beginning of the survey mentioned that Attokos must have remained an island for a large part of the Pleistocene, and that was confirmed by our work with the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, and I'm referring to Yorgos Ferendinos from the University of Patras. In the very first year, he was passing by, going to conduct his own research on a boat, and he was calling and was saying, Nena, forget, if you are looking for navigation signs, if you are looking for early sea crossings, forget about the other islands, go to Attokos, go to Attokos. I would always mention this because he gave us a good reason to explore the archaeology of the two karstic basins in the uplands of this island of Attokos that lies today in the middle of the Inner Ionian Sea, and it brought fruit. What's happening here? We field walked Attokos, I have to say, although the Inner Ionian Archipelago is one unit, one geographic unit, Attokos, we had to field walk in Attokos during the second part of our survey, because Attokos belongs to a different effort, from an administrative point of view. So we had to collaborate with the effort of Kefalonia, with Adonis Vasilakis, and field walk, discover Middle Paleolithic finds, and in a way prove that early hominins who produced these Middle Paleolithic stone tools and stone artifacts were able to cross the sea, either by swimming or by some kind of a sea vessel, using a sea vessel, manufacturing a sea vessel, crossing the protected Inner Ionian Sea and reach the highlands, the uplands of Attokos and the karstic wetlands of Attokos. So we have been working, we have been preparing a major publication on this important finding. I'm moving now into the next question, and I remind you that questions of settlement and adaptations through time in a dynamic and changing environment where sea fluctuations play an important role was a distinctive question of our research. And to this end, we began excavation at the Panthera Cave, a collapsed cave site that has yielded Middle Paleolithic material, and it's situated on the rocky coast of this islet, this barren islet that is Kythros. We discovered what we now call the Panthera Cave during the first excavation survey campaign during 2010, and the site is located here where the points, and here is a photograph and a topo map of this collapsed cave. What we have been excavating is found here on the rocky shore rather than within the chamber that is still preserved. Kythros is a pristine small island to the south of Kefali, that is a peninsula of southern Meganisi, and our work on the Panthera Cave began by working and focusing on a breccia, on a very hard as cement breccia that we discovered in 2010. The first part, you can see the breccia here. It's this red deposit. And the first 2 years of excavation, we worked on the breccia. What we practically did was that we broke the blocks of breccia with, they gave us hard time, hammer, chisel, and other machine drills. It was a very demanding work, and it lasted for 2 field campaigns. Before beginning, we undertook underwater work to explore whether part of the breccia is still beneath the sea and whether we would have to apply to the effort of underwater antiquities of the Ministry of Culture, not only to the effort of speleology. So we have also conducted some scuba diving, always with our collaborators. So the first 2 years, if you see here, we have produced an ortho photo map that includes the underwater survey and the terrestrial topographic recording. And the first 2 years, we focused on these colorful blocks that we extracted. These are the names of the block here on the key. And we thought that that's it. This is a very difficult site. We would have to, you see, the finds, the breccia contained lithic and fossils, and they were found in 2 karstic depressions in the collapsed part in front of the cave chamber. Our work included, as I said, drilling and hammering and chiseling and extracting the blocks, and then transport the breccia blocks to the lab and mechanically remove the bones and lithics using a variety of acids, which didn't work, dentist tools, which didn't work, and eventually going to the good old hammer and chisel. The yield of these breccia blocks has been very promising. We have recovered stone tools, a full industry containing primary reduction stages, debitage cores, and finished tools from a Middle Paleolithic technology that has affinities with Middle Paleolithic industries and technologies that are used in other Neanderthal sites. That is why we like to think of this site as a settlement of the Neanderthals. Before we left the second year of the excavation, have a look at this ortho photo map and this one. I asked my team to remove this block because I wanted to see how relevant. I could see some breccia flakes up here in this wall. So this was obstructing the understanding and the interpretation of the presence of breccia here. So I asked my team to help and remove this block. And after removing this block, we discovered loose deposits that were sealed beneath the breccia block. So we returned, and that's the excitement of the excavation. You never know what's gonna happen, and typically the most exciting finds come one day before you close the excavation. So we returned. We had to return in November 2016 for a third campaign in the field and excavate the loose deposits that contained only Middle Paleolithic and some possible Upper Paleolithic, early Upper Paleolithic remains in an infill in what we have been calling the chimney. We have now completed almost excavation of an infill that goes to a depth of 4 meters. And this is the chimney that contains material that has been redeposited from the floor on the right and the left of it. So after an earthquake or a major tectonic event, seismic event, material was deposited in this natural karstic feature, very deep, and it was then sealed by this rock from the ceiling and was preserved for us to be excavated. Beyond the excavation, I have to say that there will be another 1 or 2 seasons in 2023 and perhaps in 2024 if we don't finish at the Panthera Cave. But before moving, I have to say that the most important element of this site is that it has yielded 2 dates to the end of the Middle Pleistocene, 2 OSL dates that were measured at Demokritos by Yannis Maniatis and Konstantin Athanasas. And it has also yielded an assemblage of faunal remains that were most probably, the majority of which were most probably the remains of mills from the Middle Paleolithic tool-using groups. And consist of mainly medium-sized ungulates, what are mainly fallow deer, some wild pig, and the occasional bone of a carnivore, and especially of Panthera pardus, out of which what we have named as the cave number 3, because we have discovered other caves on Kythros, it was eventually christened as the Panthera Cave by my team. The last part of our work in the Middle Paleolithic archaeology of the Central Ionian Sea is the study with the aim of final publication, a comparative study between the assemblage that our team has excavated and the assemblage that was excavated back in the 90s by Konstantinos Zachos, the then effort of, that was the Ioannina effort that was in charge of the Lefkas sites and monuments. The site is impressive karstic place near a quarry at the village of Apolpaina, very close to the town of Lefkas. It is named Choirotrypa Cave, and because it has in historical times been a sheep pen, pig pen, and now it's a cow pen, and it is located here in this part next to the town of Lefkas. You can see here the site. I shan't be giving you more information about that. This is a plan that was drawn by Mrs. Petrohilou back in 1966. A large part of this large karstic feature has been destroyed because of the quarrying activity. And in 1992, a field survey in the cave Talus was undertaken by Kostas Zachos, yielded Middle Paleolithic artifacts, and he had to conduct a rescue excavation, which has yielded a sequence, a very exciting prehistoric sequence that consists of Middle Paleolithic and Neolithic finds, as well as very important Hellenistic remains. The site was excavated in 5 to 10 meters speeds. The speeds were grouped into units, into groups, and we have been currently begun the work to fully publish the material from Choirotrypa Cave. I'm now here, I can show you the different, the stratigraphic sequence. We have Paleolithic all the way, Neolithic, a distinctive layer of Neolithic containing Neolithic remains. And then we have a mix of Helladic, Middle Helladic, Neolithic, and Hellenistic remains. The Panthera and Choirotrypa Cave excavation and research team is again an international team that brings together specialists from different subfields of archaeology and the earth sciences. Let's see what the Middle Paleolithic archaeology, the main findings of the Middle Paleolithic archaeology of the Central Ionian Sea are. The first thing is that all the movements, either terrestrial or sea crossing in this landscape during, let's say, from 200,000 years up to 40,000 years, we have two dates around 200,000 years from the breccia of Panthera Cave, and we also think that the infill represents a very late, the last period or the last phase of Neanderthal presence in the Ionian, in this part of the Ionian Sea. So a large part of the activity relates to caves and rock shelters. Caves and rock shelters were inhabited, and caves and rock shelters, in caves and rock shelters, systematic archaeology unveils the full gamut of activities associated with subsistence and maintenance and occupation. So caves and rock shelters is the first component of a triptych, the first triptych of the Middle Paleolithic landscapes of habit. That's what we have termed. The second type of Middle Paleolithic landscapes of habit are the karstic basins. These karstic basins are today identified by terra rossa deposits, but we know from earlier work in the karstic wetlands of Epirus that they are associated with prehistoric, either seasonal or perennial wetlands. So a large part of our open air findings derive from these types of sites. And the third type of landscape of habit are the high points that still offer, but used to offer, commanding views and passageways to the mobile hunter-gatherers of the Middle Paleolithic. Our team has been quite active, publishing a lot in Greek and in English, presenting before international conferences the results of our work, and being open to give material that was recovered through our work to do student master's theses and PhDs. And here you can see a sample of our published work. Our project is now a 13-year-old project, has been funded by the University of Crete, the Ministry of Marine Affairs, air transport by Aegean Airlines, by the municipality of Meganisi, and the underwater seismic geophysical research was funded by the Honor Frost Foundation for Marine Archaeological Research. Now, what all this work makes us think, where does it bring us to? And I will close with this. The work of the University of Crete in the Ionian Sea is in constant interaction and dialogue with research on sea level fluctuation. Our archaeological work springs from questions of a historical nature. The conceptual framework of our work is based on three pairs of notions: connectivity and separation, dispersal and adaptation, travel and stasis. As pairs, they are not antithetical. Dispersal is a generic term used for animal and hominin populations. travel is typically limited to humans. Travel is a cultural and a social reality. Both travel and dispersal are affected when sea level fluctuations change land access routes. Stasis, on the other side, is embedded within travel. Likewise, is adaptation embedded within dispersal. Dispersal, however, is devoid of any cultural meaning. It is typically used as biologically driven. We speak about dispersing hominins, about dispersal of animals, and so on. It is not clear, I would like to argue here, when during the Paleolithic or during the Middle Pleistocene, or perhaps earlier, but when we speak about the Central Ionian Sea, we speak about the Middle Pleistocene, the end of the Middle Pleistocene. So it's not clear when during the Paleolithic the dispersal gives way to travel. We rarely read about traveling Neanderthals, about swimming Neanderthals, about sea voyaging Neanderthals. Perhaps it's about time we did, because the linking thread is the Quaternary Sea, now fragmenting the Aegean and the Ionian, and now rejoining them. Thank you.
We thank you very much, Nena, for this splendid presentation. I think it will be on behalf of all guests if I congratulate you and your team for such an adventurous, precise and difficult and so effective interdisciplinary project. Congratulations. And it is really extremely illuminating how we can proceed such ancient landscapes by using geologists, oceanologists, etc. It's really also extremely important that you can you gained a lot of material for reconstructing the Middle Paleolithic life there. There are people who would like to address questions to you. I'm reading.